I was sitting on the set of my new show. The lights were hot, the cameras were ready. My next guest was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. I had seen her on the news. She was known for her sharp comments and viral moments. Frankly, I wasn't sure what to expect. In my world, you earn respect through logic and facts, not by selling t-shirts with catchy phrases. I've seen thousands of people walk into my courtroom over the years. I can usually size them up in about 30 seconds. I looked at the monitor as she walked onto the stage. She was confident, poised, and dressed professionally. But I've seen that before. Confidence doesn't mean competence. I was ready to see if there was any substance behind the style. As she sat down across from me, the audience applauded. She smiled and waved, completely at ease. I, on the other hand, was all business. I don't do small talk. I don't care about the weather or the traffic. I get right to the point. My job, as I see it, is to cut through the nonsense. Politics is full of nonsense. I wanted to know if this young woman was just another politician full of hot air, or if she had a brain in her head. I looked at my notes. I had a few questions prepared that were designed to be tough. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. This isn't a friendly chat on a morning show. This is my courtroom, my rules. The introduction was brief. The host gave her credentials: civil rights attorney, public defender, now a member of Congress. Impressive on paper, but paper doesn't argue a case. I've seen lawyers with fancy degrees who couldn't find their way out of a paper bag. I leaned forward, looked her straight in the eye, and decided to start with something I saw in the news. I wanted to see how she handled pressure when the questions weren't from a friendly journalist. I wanted to see if she could think on her feet. The real test was about to begin. I wasn't interested in her political party or her talking points. I was interested in her mind. She met my gaze without flinching. There was no nervousness, no hesitation. She just sat there, waiting for the first question. It was a familiar scene for me, but the setting was different. Instead of a plaintiff and a defendant, it was a judge and a lawmaker. But the principle was the same: find the truth. Cut through the noise and get to the heart of the matter. I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Not arrogance, but a quiet readiness. It was the look of someone who has been in a fight before and knows how to handle herself. I was intrigued. Perhaps this wouldn't be as straightforward as I thought. Let's see what you've got, Congresswoman. Congresswoman, I began, my voice sharp and clear. I see you've been busy trademarking phrases and selling merchandise. Some might say that's more akin to being a reality star than a serious legislator. In Washington, aren't you supposed to be focused on policy, on laws, on helping the American people? Explain to me how putting a slogan on a t-shirt helps a single mother in your district pay her rent or feed her children. It seems like a distraction. It seems frivolous. Convince me that it's not just a self-serving publicity stunt. The floor is yours, but don't waste my time with political spin. I want a straight answer. I leaned back, my arms crossed, expecting a defensive or evasive response. That's what I usually get. People start talking about their brand or their message. They try to deflect. But Crockett didn't do that. She nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on her face. She didn't get flustered. She didn't raise her voice. She took a moment to compose her thoughts before she spoke, which is a sign of intelligence. She understood the question wasn't just about t-shirts. It was about her priorities and her effectiveness as a leader. She was being challenged, and I wanted to see how she would respond to that challenge directly. That's a fair question, Judge, she started, her tone even and respectful. And you're right. My focus is absolutely on policy and helping my constituents. The merchandise came from an unexpected viral moment. But that moment, and the response to it, represents something much bigger. It represents a way to connect with people who feel ignored by Washington. It's a way to fund our grassroots campaign without taking money from large corporate interests. Every dollar from that frivolous t-shirt goes directly back into communicating with voters, registering them to vote, and fighting for the policies that help that single mother pay her rent. She continued, her argument building with precision. Furthermore, Judge, in today's political climate, you have to fight fire with fire. When the discourse is dragged down by personal attacks, you have two choices. You can ignore it and let it stand, or you can push back and show strength. I chose to push back. It showed people, especially young women and women of color, that you don't have to absorb insults quietly. You can stand up for yourself. That's not a distraction from the work. It's a necessary part of clearing the way the work. It's about commanding respect so that your voice on policy can be heard. I listened, and I had to admit it was a darn good answer. I decided to shift gears. The merchandise angle didn't trip her up. Let's talk about the law. That's my territory. All right, let's move on, I said, picking up a new set of notes. You were a public defender and a civil rights attorney. You've seen the justice system from the inside. Many politicians talk about criminal justice reform as a vague concept. It sounds good, but it often lacks specifics. Give me a concrete example. What is one specific, tangible change you would make to the federal rules of evidence or criminal procedure? And what precise effect do you believe it would have on the administration of justice in this country? Be specific. This was a technical question. It required more than just passion or a talking point. It required real, in-depth legal knowledge. It's the kind of question that separates the serious people from the pretenders. I expected her to give a general answer about fairness or equality. Instead, she leaned forward, and it felt like we were two lawyers discussing a complex case. The audience and the cameras seemed to fade away for a moment. She was in her element now, and frankly, so was I. This was getting interesting. I saw the gears turning in her head, not searching for an answer, but selecting the best one. An excellent question, Judge, she replied, a spark of enthusiasm in her eyes. I would focus on reforming Federal Rule of Evidence 404B, specifically concerning the use of prior bad acts. As you know, prosecutors can often introduce a defendant's prior convictions or alleged wrongdoings to show motive or intent, but the prejudicial effect on a jury is often immense. Jurors hear about past mistakes and can easily make the leap to once a criminal, always a criminal, regardless of the actual evidence in the current case. It undermines the presumption of innocence. My proposal would be to create a higher, stricter standard for admissibility. She wasn't finished. The change would require a pre-trial hearing where the judge must find, by clear and convincing evidence, that the probative value of the prior act outweighs the danger of unfair prejudice. Right now, the balance is too easy to tip. This change would force prosecutors to build their cases on the evidence of the crime charged, not on the character of the defendant. It would lead to fairer trials, reduce wrongful convictions, and ultimately increase public trust in the justice system by ensuring that a person is judged on the facts of the case at hand, not the story of their past. It's a small rule change with a massive impact on justice. I sat back in my chair. I was genuinely impressed. That wasn't a political answer. That was a legal answer. It was detailed, it was specific, and it was brilliant. She knew the law, and she knew it well. She hadn't just memorized a talking point. She had thought deeply about the mechanics of the justice system and identified a real structural problem with a plausible, intelligent solution. In that moment, my entire perception of her shifted. The viral videos, the t-shirts, the political clapbacks. That was just the packaging. Inside that package was a sharp, formidable legal mind. I had come in expecting a lightweight and found a heavyweight. I had started our conversation with skepticism, aiming to expose a lack of substance. I was ready to dismiss her as another product of our celebrity-obsessed culture. But she proved me wrong. She met every challenge with intelligence, grace, and an unshakable command of her subject matter. She demonstrated that it's possible to be savvy in the modern media landscape without sacrificing intellectual depth. She could play the game on social media, but she could also step into the courtroom, or in this case, my studio, and argue law with the best of them. She wasn't just a collection of sound bites, she was a force to be reckoned with. As we wrapped up the interview, I looked at her differently. I saw past the headlines in the political theater. I saw a dedicated public servant with a powerful intellect and a clear passion for justice. My initial judgment, based on a superficial media image, was completely off the mark. It was a humbling reminder that you cannot and should not judge a book by its cover or a congresswoman by her clapbacks. Substance and style are not mutually exclusive. You can have both. In a world that's quick to label and dismiss, her performance was a masterclass in proving the critics wrong. The experience reinforced a lesson I've learned time and time again in my own courtroom. First impressions are often wrong. It's easy to make snap judgments based on how someone looks or what you've heard about them. But the truth often lies deeper. You have to be willing to listen, to ask the tough questions, and most importantly, to change your mind when presented with compelling evidence. Congresswoman Crockett provided that evidence. She earned my respect not with a slogan but with her substance. And in my book, that's the only way to do it. She's got a good head on her shoulders. She'll do just fine.